The 1960s were not just another decade. They were a turning point in modern history, a time of rebellion, innovation, cultural transformation, and global tension. In just 10 short years, the world saw dramatic shifts in politics, technology, civil rights, music, and even the way people thought about themselves. From historic protests to space exploration, the 1960s reshaped the future in ways we still feel today. In this video, we're diving into 5 powerful and fascinating facts about the 1960s, stories that defined a generation and changed the course of history. Let's begin. One of the most defining aspects of the 1960s was the civil rights movement in the United States, a powerful fight against racial segregation and injustice. Although the movement began earlier, the 1960s became its most intense and impactful period. African Americans and their allies organized protests, marches, and acts of civil disobedience to challenge discriminatory laws, especially in the South. These laws, known as Jim Crow laws, enforced segregation in schools, transportation, restaurants, and public spaces. Peaceful protest became a central strategy. Sit-ins, where black students would sit at whites-only lunch counters, spread across the country. Freedom riders boarded buses to challenge segregation in interstate travel, risking violence and arrest. One of the most iconic moments came in 1963 with the March on Washington. Over 250,000 people gathered in the nation's capital, demanding equality and justice. It was there that Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, words that still resonate today. But progress came at a cost. Activists faced brutality, arrests, and even death. The struggle was long and painful, but it led to historic victories. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed, banning discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Just 1 year later, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 ensured that African Americans could no longer be denied the right to vote through unfair practices. The civil rights movement didn't just change laws, it changed minds. It inspired other movements around the world and laid the foundation for ongoing struggles for equality. Fact number 2. The space race took humanity beyond Earth. While people on Earth were fighting for equality, another battle was happening beyond the atmosphere: the space race. This competition between the United States and the Soviet Union was about more than science. It was about power, pride, and proving which system, capitalism or communism, was superior. The race began in the late 1950s, but the 1960s saw its most dramatic milestones. In 1961, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human to travel into space, orbiting the Earth and making history. This shocked the United States and intensified the competition. In response, President John F. Kennedy made a bold promise: America would land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. What followed was one of the most ambitious scientific efforts ever undertaken. NASA worked tirelessly to develop new technologies, train astronauts, and push the limits of human capability. There were setbacks, including tragic accidents like the Apollo 1 fire, which claimed the lives of 3 astronauts. But the mission continued. Finally, on July 20, 1969, the world watched as Apollo 11 successfully landed on the moon. Astronaut Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface and delivered the now famous words,
"That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
Millions of people watched the event live on television, a moment that united humanity in awe and wonder. The space race didn't just lead to the moon landing. It accelerated technological innovation, from computers to satellite communication, and expanded our understanding of the universe. It also proved something powerful: that human ambition, when combined with science and determination, can achieve the seemingly impossible. If there's one word to describe the 1960s, it's change. This decade saw a massive cultural shift, especially among young people. Traditional values were challenged, and a new generation began redefining freedom, identity, and expression. At the center of this transformation was the counterculture movement. Young people rejected the norms of previous generations, questioning authority, consumerism, and social expectations. Many embraced ideas of peace, love, and personal freedom. The hippie movement became a symbol of this change. Hippies promoted nonviolence, environmental awareness, and communal living. They often expressed themselves through colorful clothing, long hair, and music. Music itself became a powerful force during the 1960s. Rock and roll evolved into something more experimental and meaningful. Songs began addressing social issues like war, civil rights, and political unrest. Festivals like Woodstock in 1969 brought hundreds of thousands of people together in a celebration of music and unity. It wasn't just a concert, it was a cultural statement. At the same time, television became more widespread, allowing people to experience events as they happened. For the first time, global audiences could share moments like protests, speeches, and even the moon landing. The Cultural Revolution of the 1960s didn't just influence fashion and music, it reshaped attitudes toward authority, relationships, and individuality. It marked the beginning of a more open, expressive, and questioning society. While the 1960s were a time of progress and creativity, they were also marked by conflict, none more controversial than the Vietnam War. The United States became deeply involved in Vietnam as part of its effort to stop the spread of communism during the Cold War. At first, many Americans supported the war, but as the conflict dragged on, public opinion began to shift. The war was unlike any before it. For the first time, graphic images and footage were broadcast directly into people's homes through television. Viewers saw the harsh realities of combat, violence, destruction, and the human cost of war. This exposure played a major role in turning public opinion against the conflict. Young men were drafted into the military, often against their will. Many families were affected, and protests began to grow across the country. College campuses became centers of anti-war activism. Demonstrators marched in the streets, demanding an end to the war. One of the most shocking moments came in 1970, just after the decade ended, when 4 students were killed by National Guard troops during a protest at Kent State University. This tragedy highlighted the deep divisions within American society. The Vietnam War didn't just impact those who fought in it, it changed how people viewed government, authority, and foreign policy. It created a sense of distrust that would shape politics for years to come. Amid all the change and upheaval, the 1960s were also a time of profound loss. Several major leaders and public figures were assassinated during this decade, leaving a lasting impact on society. In 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. His death stunned the nation and the world. Kennedy had inspired hope and optimism, and his sudden loss created a sense of uncertainty. Just 5 years later, in 1968, 2 more influential figures were killed. Martin Luther King Jr., a leader of the civil rights movement, was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. His death sparked riots in cities across the United States and marked a devastating moment in the fight for equality. Only months later, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, who was running for president, was also assassinated. Like his brother, he had been seen as a figure of hope and change. These assassinations had a profound emotional impact on the public. They created a sense of instability and fear, but also strengthened the resolve of many to continue the work these leaders had begun. The 1960s were a decade of extremes: hope and conflict, progress and tragedy, unity and division. It was a time when people stood up for their rights, challenged authority, and dreamed bigger than ever before. From the civil rights movement to the moon landing, from cultural revolutions to political upheaval, the events of the 1960s continue to shape our world today. The freedoms we enjoy, the technology we use, and the conversations we have about equality and justice all have roots in this transformative decade. The 1960s remind us that change is possible, but it often comes with struggle. And sometimes, a single decade can redefine the future of humanity.